The theater lights were still dim when the first note of the night was about to be sung, but somewhere beyond the stage, beyond the glittering cameras and the roaring crowd, a story much bigger than a performance was quietly walking toward destiny. Before we begin, if stories of struggle, hope, and impossible dreams inspire you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because what you're about to witness is not just a performance, it's a life-changing moment that proves miracles still happen. Backstage at America's Got Talent, a thin teenage boy stood barefoot on the cold floor, clutching a worn guitar with cracked edges taped together so tightly it looked like it was holding on out of pure will. His name was Miguel Santos, a poor Filipino boy from a small fishing village where dreams were often swallowed by the sea before they ever learned to swim. He closed his eyes and breathed slowly, remembering the sounds of home, the waves crashing against broken boats, the distant laughter of children playing in dust, and his mother's soft voice humming old songs late at night to drown out hunger. Miguel had grown up with almost nothing. His father had been a fisherman, strong and proud, until a violent storm took his life when Miguel was only 8 years old. From that day on, the ocean that once fed their family became a symbol of fear. His mother worked endlessly, washing clothes for neighbors, selling dried fish at the market, doing anything she could to keep Miguel and his younger sister alive. Some nights, they ate rice with salt. Other nights, they ate nothing at all. But no matter how hard life became, music never left their home. Miguel's father had loved to sing. On quiet evenings, he would play an old guitar and sing songs about love, faith, and survival. When he died, that guitar was all he left behind. The strings were rusted, the wood chipped, but to Miguel, it was treasure. He taught himself to play by watching older men at the docks, copying chords from memory, and practicing until his fingers bled. Music became his escape, his prayer, and his promise to a father he still spoke to in his dreams. At school, Miguel was often mocked. His clothes were torn, his shoes too small, and his accent thick. Some teachers told him to focus on real work, saying music wouldn't feed his family. But every time he felt small, he remembered his mother's words, "If God put a song in your heart, Anik, it means he wants the world to hear it." Those words carried him through years of doubt, hunger, and rejection. The idea of America's Got Talent came to Miguel like a distant star, beautiful but unreachable. He saw clips on a broken phone at a local shop, watched singers change their lives in minutes, and wondered what it would feel like to stand on that stage. It took months of courage just to audition locally. He sold snacks on the street to save money, slept on bus station benches, and faced rejection after rejection. But one day, against all odds, he received an email that changed everything. He was invited to audition in America. The journey was terrifying. Miguel had never been on a plane before. He had never left his country. When he hugged his mother goodbye, she pressed a small wooden cross into his hand and whispered, "Sing like your life depends on it, because sometimes it does." With tears in his eyes, Miguel promised he would come back stronger, no matter what happened. Now, standing backstage at AGT, his hands shook. The crowd was loud, the judges powerful. Simon Cowell sat at the center, known for crushing dreams with a single sentence. Miguel had watched him on screen, feared him, respected him. This was the man whose golden buzzer could change everything or end it instantly. Miguel whispered a prayer and stepped onto the stage when his name was called. The spotlight hit him hard. The audience grew quiet, curious. He looked impossibly small on that massive stage. Terry Crews smiled warmly and asked him about his life. Miguel spoke softly, his voice trembling as he talked about his village, his family, and his dream. When asked why he was there, he said, "Because my mother believes in me, and I want to give her a better life." Something shifted in the room. Simon leaned forward. "What are you going to sing?" he asked. Miguel swallowed and replied, "An original song, about hope." A risky choice. Original songs often failed. The judges exchanged glances. The audience held its breath. Miguel strummed the first chord. It was gentle, almost fragile. Then he began to sing. His voice wasn't loud, but it was honest. It carried pain, longing, and a quiet strength that cut through the silence. He sang about empty plates, about working hands, about losing a father and finding courage in music. He sang about a mother's sacrifice and a dream too stubborn to die. With every note, the room changed. People leaned forward. Some covered their mouths. Tears began to fall. Halfway through the song, Miguel's voice cracked. For a moment, it seemed like he might stop. He closed his eyes, took a breath, and continued stronger than before. That moment broke something open in the audience. The song wasn't perfect, but it was real. And real was unstoppable. By the final chorus, people were openly crying. The camera panned to the judges. Heidi wiped her eyes. Sophia held her chest. Howie shook his head in disbelief. And Simon Cowell, stone-faced, silent Simon, was staring at Miguel with an expression no one had seen before. His eyes were glossy. The last note faded into silence. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the theater exploded. A standing ovation thundered through the room. Miguel stood frozen, overwhelmed, tears streaming down his face. He had sung like his life depended on it, and somehow, the world had listened. The judges spoke one by one, praising his honesty, his courage, his raw talent. But when Simon finally spoke, the room went quiet again. He stood up slowly. "Miguel," he said, his voice unusually soft, "I've heard thousands of singers. Many with better technique, stronger voices, more training. But very few with a story like yours, and even fewer who can make people feel the way you just did." Simon paused, then continued, "You didn't just sing a song. You reminded us why music matters." The audience erupted again. Miguel covered his face, shaking. Then Simon turned toward the crowd, reached out, and slammed the golden buzzer. Gold confetti rained from the ceiling. The crowd screamed. Miguel fell to his knees, sobbing uncontrollably. This wasn't just a buzzer, it was a promise. A promise that his life would never be the same. Back in his village, his mother watched the moment on a tiny television, surrounded by neighbors. When the golden confetti fell, she collapsed into tears, clutching her chest, whispering her son's name. For the first time in her life, she believed the future might be kinder. Miguel's journey didn't end there. The live shows were harder. The pressure immense. Critics doubted him. Some said his story was stronger than his voice. Others said he wouldn't last. But Miguel kept singing not to win, but to honor where he came from. Each performance carried his past and his hope for the future. Win or lose, Miguel had already changed something. He showed the world that talent doesn't come from comfort, that greatness can rise from poverty, and that sometimes the quietest voices carry the loudest truths. He proved that dreams don't belong only to the rich or the lucky, but to anyone brave enough to hold on. As the season went on, millions followed his story. Kids from villages like his picked up guitars. Parents hugged their children tighter. And somewhere in the noise of fame and lights, Miguel remained the same boy who sang to survive. In the end, this isn't just a story about a poor Filipino boy on a big stage. It's about hope refusing to die. It's about believing when no one else does. And it's a reminder that one song, sung from the heart, can bring the world to tears. If this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you to never give up on your dreams, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because more stories like Miguel's deserve to be heard, and maybe, just maybe, the next one will be yours. The theater was holding its breath long before the boy ever stepped onto the stage. The kind of silence that feels heavy, the kind that comes right before something unforgettable happens. Before this story unfolds completely, take a moment. If you believe in underdogs, if you believe dreams can rise from nothing, like this video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this remind us why hope still matters in a world that often forgets it. Miguel Santos stood behind the curtain, his heart pounding so loudly he was sure the microphones could hear it. He was small for his age, thin from years of eating less than he needed, wearing a simple shirt borrowed from a volunteer and shoes that didn't quite fit. In his hands was an old guitar, its wood scratched and cracked, its strings replaced more times than he could remember. That guitar had crossed oceans with him. It carried not just music, but memories, pain, and promises. Miguel came from a tiny fishing village in the Philippines where houses leaned against each other as if sharing strength. The smell of salt and dried fish lived permanently in the air. Children ran barefoot on dusty paths, and nights were lit more by stars than electricity. It was a place where people survived day by day, where dreams were whispered quietly because saying them out loud felt dangerous. Miguel's earliest memories were of his father's voice. Strong, warm, full of life. His father would come home from the sea exhausted, hands rough and bleeding, but still find the energy to pick up his guitar and sing. Those songs filled their small home with magic. For a few minutes, hunger disappeared. Fear faded. They were just a family, together. Then came the storm. Miguel was 8 when the waves turned violent. The wind howled like something alive, something angry. Boats were destroyed. Nets were torn apart. His father never came home. They found pieces of his boat days later, but never him. The ocean that once gave them food had taken everything else. After that, life became harder in ways a child shouldn't have to understand. Miguel's mother aged overnight. She worked endlessly cleaning houses, selling fish, washing clothes until her hands cracked. Some days, Miguel skipped school to help earn money. Other days, he went to class hungry, trying to concentrate while his stomach burned. Music became Miguel's escape. When everything felt too heavy, he would sit alone and play his father's guitar. The strings hurt his fingers, but the pain reminded him he was alive. He learned songs by listening, by watching, by feeling. There were no lessons, no teachers, just instinct and emotion. People laughed at him sometimes. Music won't feed you, they said. Dreams are for rich kids. Even some teachers encouraged him to focus on practical work. But at night, his mother would sit beside him, listening quietly, tears in her eyes. Sing, she would whisper. Sing like your father did. As Miguel grew older, his voice changed. It became deeper, richer, carrying something raw that people noticed. At local gatherings, neighbors asked him to sing. Coins dropped into his hand. Sometimes, it was enough to buy rice for dinner. Each small applause felt like proof that maybe, just maybe, his dream wasn't foolish. The first time Miguel saw America's Got Talent, it was on a flickering screen in a small shop. He watched singers step onto a massive stage, watched judges decide their fate in seconds. When he saw the golden buzzer fall, showering someone in gold, something stirred inside him. It felt impossible, ridiculous even. A poor boy from a fishing village? On that stage? But dreams don't ask permission to grow. The journey to get there was brutal. Miguel auditioned locally, then regionally. He was rejected more times than he could count. Each rejection felt like a door slamming shut. But he kept going. He sang on buses, on streets, at small events. He saved every coin. He slept in crowded rooms and sometimes outside stations. Hunger followed him, fear followed him, but the dream walked beside him too. When the email finally came inviting him to audition in America, Miguel read it again and again, afraid it would disappear. His mother cried when she saw it. Not from joy alone, but from fear. America was far. The world was big. But she smiled through her tears and said, "This is why you were born." The goodbye was painful. His mother hugged him tightly, pressing a small wooden cross into his palm. "No matter what happens," she said, "remember where you come from." Miguel promised he would. Now, backstage at AGT, those memories rushed through him. The hunger. The storms. The songs sung in darkness. He whispered his father's name under his breath and stepped forward when his name was called. The stage lights blinded him for a moment. The audience was massive, stretching farther than he could see. Judges sat like giants before him. Terry Crews greeted him warmly, but Miguel's voice shook as he spoke. He told them about his village, his family, his dream. The crowd listened closely. Simon Cowell watched him carefully. "Why should we listen to you?" Simon asked, not unkindly, but seriously. Miguel swallowed. "Because, this song is my life," he said. He began to play. The first notes were soft, trembling slightly. Then his voice entered, gentle, honest, carrying a pain that didn't need translation. He sang about the sea, about loss, about a mother who never gave up. He sang about nights without food, mornings without hope, and a dream that refused to die. As the song continued, the audience grew still. Phones lowered. Whispers stopped. Tears appeared. The camera caught a woman in the crowd covering her mouth, crying. Another man wiped his eyes, surprised by his own reaction. Miguel's voice cracked near the bridge. For a second, he almost stopped. He felt the weight of the moment, the fear of failing. Then he remembered his mother's face. He remembered his father's songs. He took a breath and sang louder, stronger, as if pouring his entire soul into that stage. The final note hung in the air, fragile and powerful all at once. Silence. Then the eruption. The audience leapt to their feet, applause crashing like waves. Miguel stood frozen, tears streaming down his face, his hands shaking. He had never experienced anything like this. The judges were visibly emotional. Heidi praised his sincerity. Sophia spoke about his story touching her heart. Howie said moments like this were why the show existed. Then Simon stood up. I'm not easy to impress, Simon said. But you made me feel something real. And that's rare. The crowd roared. Simon walked toward the golden buzzer. Miguel's breath caught. When Simon slammed it, gold rained down like a miracle. Miguel fell to his knees, crying openly, overwhelmed by disbelief and gratitude. Across the world, in a small village, Miguel's mother watched on a borrowed television. When the golden buzzer fell, she screamed, then cried, neighbors gathering around her, sharing the moment. For once, hope felt louder than poverty. Miguel's journey didn't suddenly become easy. Fame brought pressure. Critics questioned him. The competition intensified. Each live performance demanded more strength, more courage. Some nights, he doubted himself. But every time he stepped on stage, he sang for the boy he once was, for the family still struggling back home. He didn't just sing to win. He sang to remind the world that talent exists everywhere, even in the poorest corners. He sang to show that pain can become power. He sang because someone out there might need to hear that giving up is not the answer. By the end of the season, Miguel had already won something greater than a trophy. He had changed lives. Donations poured into his village. Children picked up instruments. Parents believed again. And Miguel? He remained humble. He returned home when he could, hugging his mother, walking the same dusty paths, guitar in hand. Fame hadn't changed his heart, only strengthened it. This is more than a story about a golden buzzer. It's a story about faith, sacrifice, and the unstoppable force of a dream. It's proof that no matter where you start, your voice matters. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or reminded you to never stop believing, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because the next dreamer might be watching, and your support could be the reason they keep going.